Yes, you would.
You gotta watch what you post.
That's from 2007 when he graduated from college. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't look like that anymore, do I? Neither does he, for that matter. Will you pray with me, my friends? Loving God, give us the wisdom we need to nurture others as parent, friend, child, sibling, teacher, aunt, uncle, cousin, grandparent, guide. May we show your love and patience in our lives. Amen. Well, today is often called Good Shepherd Sunday, for obvious reasons, after our readings, right? And so both of these readings obviously refer to God or Jesus as a shepherd who guides, feeds, and protects the flock of the faithful. And there are several passages in both the New Testament and the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, that refer to God and Jesus in this way. Some of them refer also to the ruler of Israel as a shepherd, especially David, who was a shepherd at one point in his life. Talk about second careers. And I think we can understand why shepherds would be used as a metaphor for the rulers. Shepherds care for their flocks. They make sure that they have food and water and protection. They heal them when they're sick or they're injured. The shepherd leads the flock, right? And these are all things that rulers are responsible for, whether they rule sheep or people, a flock or a nation. In this day and age, most of us don't know that much about sheep. Has anybody actually taken care of sheep?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Except, well, maybe we know that they're fluffy and they give us wool and lambs are cute, right? Maybe we've seen an Animal Planet special once or twice, especially, in the context of the New Testament, how did that all work back in the day? So here's what I learned. I did some research. The flocks were kept out on the fields or in the mountains or out in the pastures and fields, wherever they could find something to graze on. They might go into a pen at night for protection from wolves and bears and so on. But most of the time, they were on the move because, they'd eat all the grass in a pasture and they had to go someplace else. Also, something very interesting is that sheep, because they're smaller, they eat the grass closer to the ground than cattle do.
Yeah.
So you cannot graze sheep and cattle in the same field because the cattle can't get to the grass. It's cut too short. It's cropped too short for them. Interesting side note there. But shepherds had to be therefore nomadic. They had to go wherever there was fodder, wherever there was grass. So the shepherds weren't really at home very much, if they even had a home. Some places later on, they might have wagons that they lived in that were moved along with the sheep. But in Jesus' day, that wasn't true. They just followed with the sheep and they had sort of tents. So they lived out there in the fields, in the mountains, or wherever it was with their sheep, and they socialized almost entirely with other shepherds. They were often seen as unclean and looked down on because they simply weren't part of society, right? As I said, they very few were able to have settled homes or families because they were following wherever there was fodder for the sheep. They were marginalized, okay? They had to protect the flock from wolves, lions, other predators, and they healed the sheep when no one was wounded or sick. They helped them have their lambs, so they were veterinarians too. They milked them. That time people drank sheep's milk a lot more than they do now. They made sure that there was good water for them to drink, and in the spring, they sheared the sheep. Now, one of the most interesting phenomena, I've never actually seen it, but I've seen it described, I've read about it. something that not everyone knows about. I was reading a book about, it was set on a sheep ranch in Wyoming, and they described this, and I just found this, I tried to find a video of it, and I just couldn't. It's called lambing up. And what happens is when they're getting ready to shear the sheep, they separate out the ewes, the moms, and the lambs, because the lambs would get in the way when they're trying to shear the moms, right? So they shear all the ewes, all the mom sheep, and then when they're all done, they release them back into the field where the lambs were. And there's this enormous cacophony as all the mothers' sheep, all the ewes, are bleating and crying and calling to their babies, and all the lambs are calling and crying and bleating for their moms. And do you know what happens? Within 5 minutes, they have all found each other. They know each other's voices. Even as tiny as the lambs are, most of them are not even a month old yet, and yet they know their mother's voice. In the same way, those sheep know too who their shepherd is. They follow him or her by the sound of their voice. The shepherd in biblical times called to the sheep as well as the sheepdogs. They didn't have sheepdogs. I'm not going to go on to a side note about corgis. Both the dog and the shepherd let the sheep know where the shepherd is, and therefore where it is safe. Okay. Where it is safe. That was one of the two main functions of the shepherd: keeping the sheep safe from predators, from lions, from illness, from injury, from someone who might steal them, from another person, as well as making sure they had food and water. In short, ensuring that the flock was healthy, happy, and whole. Well, isn't that the job of parents and mentors as well? To keep those they care for, their families, whether biological or chosen, healthy and safe. Parents, whether chosen or biological, who are invested in their families, feed and shelter them to the best of their ability. They protect them from harm. They teach them what they need to know or make sure that others can teach them. Mentors, guides, parents, that's what they do. Now, yes, there are people who don't live up to their role. Some of us have been wounded by that lack of care or protection from those who should have been guarding us from harm or should have been supporting us. Perhaps they themselves were not cared for. Perhaps they didn't know how to give that care. Perhaps it was something else that prevented them. There are no words I can speak that will heal that pain. There are no simple solutions. Some people heal by becoming better parents or mentors themselves, and some refuse the role entirely because they don't feel adequate. And each of us must find our own way. But know this, that divine love surrounds each one of us, although it may not feel like it, or that comfort might feel far away sometimes. It's there for us whenever we need it. It's not an easy job to care for others, to protect and comfort them, to know what the best thing is for them, and sometimes to watch them do exactly the wrong thing, and knowing that they have to learn that way. All we can do, whether we're friend, guide, parent, mentor, shepherd, is to make the best choices as we see them at the moment. So for those of us who sometimes second guess ourselves, you did your best, and it's enough. Sheep are herd animals, right? They live best as part of a herd, whether it's 2 or 3 or 1,000. Many animals live as part of a group: wolves, horses, goats, lions, starlings, bees, and humans too. One of the strongest predictors for physical and mental health is positive connections to other human beings. When we have friends and family, we're simply healthier and happier. Even seeing the same doorman or care aide or checkout clerk on a regular basis has a positive effect. Right? Families, whether by birth or chosen, ideally give us safe space to be who we are, how we are, to offer us love and support when we need it, and allow us to support others, which is also an important part of that human connection. Our herd, so to speak, gives us a place in the world, a home in the world. My mother and sisters and son and daughter-in-law are a refuge for me. When I don't think that anyone else cares, I know they do. Whether it's as minor as dealing with the complications of everyday life, like a car repair, or as major as moving to Chicago to pastor in a new church, they're there. And they've needed me too. It's reciprocal. So today is Mother's Day here in the U.S. Let's remember all those who gave us safe space. Parents, siblings, friends, lovers, teachers, mentors, counselors, and give thanks for our flock gathered in love. In all God's names.